You ever get pulled over for being too confident? No speeding, no broken laws, just your skin and your posture doing all the talking. That's how it started for Luther Cade. A quiet road, a long drive, a warm bowl of chicken stew waiting at the end. And then, a flashlight, a badge, and a barrel of bias pointed straight at his dignity. It was supposed to be a simple evening. Luther, 63, with steady hands and an old-school calm, was heading south on County Route 83 in Summit Springs, Georgia. The sun had dipped an hour ago, leaving the sky bruised purple and the asphalt still clinging to its heat. His 1999 Chrysler Concorde purred softly beneath him. Not flashy, not fast, just familiar. It was the last car his wife Rosa drove before she passed. He never replaced it. The old jazz cassette in the stereo hissed softly between notes, Coltrane maybe. Luther drove like a man who knew the weight of every second. He wasn't a federal judge tonight, not a former Marine, not the man whose decisions once shaped immigration law across 3 states. No. Tonight he was just Rosa's husband, Camille's older brother, the one coming home with groceries and a warm voice. And then came the lights, blue and red flashing hard behind him like a war drum. Luther's chest tightened. Not fear exactly, just that ancestral reflex, the one born in a country that too often mistakes black skin for threat. He checked the mirror. A young white officer, buzz-cut, cocky walk. The kind that holds power like a toy he's dying to break. Luther pulled over, killed the engine, rolled down the window halfway, hands on the wheel, 10 and 2. Like always. License and registration came the bark. No greeting, no explanation. The flashlight was already in his eyes. Luther didn't flinch. "Good evening, officer." No answer. Just that light digging into his face like it was looking for guilt. Name, Luther Cade. The officer paused, squinted. "Address says Atlanta. What brings you out here, Mr. Cade?" "I'm visiting family. My sister lives nearby. She's recovering from pneumonia." The cop sniffed literally. "Smells like weed." "Step out." "There's no marijuana here, officer." "You refusing a lawful search, I'm asserting my Fourth Amendment rights." Luther said, not raised, not angry, just firm, just law. And that's when the shift happened. The cop name tag said R. Gentry smiled. But it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile you see in boot camp right before someone gets broken down. "Well, well," he said, circling the car, "we got ourselves a lawyer. Or just some smart-ass old man who thinks he knows better." Luther didn't respond, but his fingers tightened on the steering wheel, white in the knuckles. That flash of memory, a night in Camp Lejeune, 1981. The first time a superior officer called him boy. The shame, the blood on his lip, the lesson: endure, survive. Speak only when it matters. But Gentry wasn't done. He grabbed Luther's door, yanked it open, and pulled him out. The younger officer standing nearby, Officer Caleb Ruiz, stepped forward for a second, then stopped. He looked nervous. His hand twitched near his belt. Then he looked at Gentry and stayed still, didn't say a word. Luther was shoved against the hood of his own car. Cold metal on warm skin. He didn't resist. He didn't speak. Hands behind your back. Cuffs clinked. Too tight. Deliberate. As Gentry patted him down, rough and invasive, he started laughing. "What's this?" he said, pulling a velvet-wrapped item from Luther's duffel bag. He unwrapped it with mock ceremony and held it up. A polished mahogany gavel worn smooth from years of service. "You serious right now?" Gentry turned to Ruiz, laughing. "This guy carrying a gavel around. What's next, a fake robe? Maybe a little courtroom in his trunk?" Ruiz didn't laugh. His eyes flicked to Luther, then away. His jaw clenched. He looked like he wanted to speak, but didn't. His hand curled into a fist. Then slowly he stepped back. Gentry slammed the gavel on the hood hard. The sound cracked through the silence like a shot. Bang. "Oops," he said. "Guess I just overruled you." And that's when Luther blinked. Slow. The kind of blink that holds back a tide. That one word overruled it, unlocked something. That night in 1981 came back clearer. Not just the insult, but the stare of fellow recruits watching it happen. Silent. Some laughing, some wincing. All complicit. And then, one voice, a young private white Georgia boy, tried to say, "That ain't right." He got kitchen duty for 2 months. Never spoke up again. Gentry shoved Luther into the back of the squad car. The gavel lay forgotten in the gravel. The Buick door creaked closed. Luther's head hit the frame on the way in. He winced not from pain but from memory. In the front seat, Gentry chuckled. These city boys think they can stroll into our town, flash some law talk, and walk away clean. Ruiz didn't reply, just stared out the window, face pale. His reflection in the glass looked ashamed. And behind them, an elderly white couple who had gathered on the sidewalk watched the arrest. The woman whispered, "What did he do?" The man shrugged. "Probably trouble." But even as he said it, his voice faltered. His eyes lingered too long on Luther's calm face. Something didn't add up, and he knew it. But they said nothing. Not yet. The cell stank of bleach and old sweat. Luther sat on a metal bench cuffed to the wall. His breathing was slow, measured. Not because he wasn't angry, but because he was. Rage for him had always been like a furnace-controlled heat. The desk sergeant Doyle didn't even look up as Gentry shoved him in. "Another one, obstruction," Gentry said flatly. Mouthing off possible drug money got himself a judge complex. Doyle raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. He got ID. Gentry tossed Luther's wallet onto the desk. "Sure, Luther Cade, from Atlanta. Thinks he's hot stuff." But Doyle froze when he saw the ID. His eyes narrowed at the Bar Association seal. He flipped through the cards, business cards from federal law clerks, one from a U.S. Marshal's office, laminated and well-worn. Then he turned toward Luther. "Sir, are you in the judiciary?" Luther said nothing, just looked up, a calm, cold stare that made Doyle clear his throat. "Let him sit," Gentry barked. "He'll break." Doyle looked like he wanted to say more, but Gentry's hand was already on his holster, the kind of gesture no one needed spelled out. Doyle backed off, but his hand twitched, his mouth opened, then closed, and the moment passed. 30 minutes later, under flickering fluorescent lights, Luther finally spoke. "I'd like my phone call." Gentry leaned in smug. "You want to call your city friends? Maybe some fake judge hotline." Luther didn't reply. He was walked to the front desk. The moment he held the receiver, his hands were steady, dialed slow, deliberate. 202 area code, Washington, D.C. The line picked up after 2 rings. "This is the U.S. Marshal's Service. Please state your badge or clearance level." Luther's voice didn't waver. "This is Judge Luther Cade, 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. I am being unlawfully detained in Summit Springs Police Department, Georgia by Officer Richard Gentry. I am invoking Protocol Iron Bench. Immediate response requested. Silence. Then Judge Cade, we're tracking your location. Remain calm. Response en route." He hung up, slowly. The sound of the phone settling back into its cradle was louder than thunder. Gentry laughed, too loud, too nervous. "What the hell was that? You playing judge now, huh? What's next? You gonna bang your gavel on my car door?" But even he was starting to sweat. Doyle's eyes flicked toward the entrance. His radio squawked once, then again. "Sir," he muttered to Gentry, "you might wanna—" A screech of tires cut through the air like a warning shot. 3 black SUVs rolled in hard-boxed Gentry's cruiser. Doors burst open. Men in tactical gear, U.S. Marshal patches on their arms, rifles shouldered, moved with purpose. One agent approached the station door and knocked once firm, final. When the door opened, time stopped. Gentry stepped back. His cocky smirk melted like butter under a blowtorch. The lead marshal, tall, dark skin, mirrored glasses, addressed Luther first. "Judge Cade, are you hurt? I'm fine. But my rights are not. Understood." He nodded. 2 agents moved behind Gentry in perfect silence. One took his sidearm, the other unpinned his badge. Gentry's voice cracked. "Wait, this is some kind of mix-up. He never said he was a judge. You never asked." Luther said, his voice like stone. "You think you're better than me," Gentry snapped, voice rising like a man drowning. "You think you get to play some special game 'cause you wear a black robe and quote law." His eyes were glassy, red. Rage and humiliation twisted his face into something ugly and small. "You think that car makes you humble? You think pretending to be small makes you good?" Luther stepped forward. "No. I think remembering where I came from keeps me sane. I've been called boy by people like you. I've been slammed into lockers, into concrete, into silence, and I survived. Not to punish, but to witness." A pause. Then Luther turned to Officer Caleb Ruiz, still standing near the corner, fists clenched. "You had a moment back there. You knew it was wrong. You could have said something." Ruiz's face crumpled. "I wanted to. I swear. But he threatened to—" He choked up. lowered his head. "I'm sorry." Luther nodded once, quietly. That's the start of justice. Regret. The agents began walking Gentry out in cuffs, but Gentry fought. "You'll see, this ain't over. You think people like him belong in courtrooms on benches? You think this country wants his kind making the rules?" Doyle stepped back ashamed. Ruiz looked away, and outside a small crowd had gathered. Locals, curious, whispers circling. "He's a judge. I thought he was a dealer." "No, he was visiting his sister. God help us." We just stood there. Some turned their backs, some stared at the ground, but a few stepped forward. One woman, elderly, trembling, called out, "I'm sorry, sir. We should have said something." Luther gave her a long, unreadable look, then finally a slow nod. No smile, just acknowledgement. Weeks later, headlines hit every outlet. Federal judge illegally detained by Summit Springs officer. DOJ orders federal oversight. Justice Department investigates small-town police culture. Officer Gentry was sentenced to 7 years. His pension gone. Ruiz testified. Earned leniency. The police department fell under a consent decree. New training, new leadership. But the stains took longer to fade. And Luther. He sat again in Camille's kitchen. Chicken stew in a chipped blue bowl. The smell reminded him of Rosa, of everything he thought he had buried. Camille stirred her tea, looking at him. "You okay?" He looked at the window, saw the world going on like nothing changed. "I'm fine," he said. But his hands told another story. The fingers still rubbed the faint red marks on his wrist, quietly, without thinking. And then Camille said the sentence that wouldn't leave him. "You were lucky, Luther. You had a title. You had a number to call. But what if you were just someone's uncle or some mechanic on his way home?" Luther didn't answer. He didn't blink. Because she was right. The real story. It's not that a bad cop went to prison. It's that a good man had to prove his worth to survive. So you tell me, how many others didn't have a number to call? You think justice was served, or was it just delayed? Comment below who was right, who was wrong. And if you believe in standing up for what's right, hit like, subscribe, and share this story. Justice should never depend on a badge or a title.